Hi dear students, today we are going to learn about gymnosperms in this session. The gymnosperms are plants in which the ovules are not enclosed by any ovary wall and remain exposed both before and after fertilization. So regarding these gymnosperms, you would have learned even in 9th and 10th standard. But as per the class, you are going ahead. The level of the topic is also increasing. There you would have learned gymnosperms. What is the meaning of that terminology? Anybody knows that? Yes, gymnos means naked and sperma means seeds. In short, you have to understand gymnosperms in which the plants are there and having the seeds, they are naked. Before fertilization and after fertilization, they remain as exposed. So that is the first point we are discussing here. The gymnosperms are plants in which the ovules are not enclosed by any ovary wall and remain exposed both before and after fertilization. The seeds that develop post-fertilization are not covered. That is, they are naked. Gymnosperms include medium-sized trees or tall trees and shrubs. So what types of plants are coming under gymnosperms? They include medium-sized trees or tall trees and shrubs. One of the gymnosperms, the giant redwood tree, Sequoia, is one of the tallest tree species. It's a very important point, you have to underline that. This question can be asked. Which is the tallest tree species coming under gymnosperms? What is its name? Yes, the giant redwood tree or Sequoia. And then you have to understand, if the tallest is there, smallest will be also there. Have you any idea regarding this? Which is the smallest gymnosperm? Please write down the name. That is Zamia pygmea. What is the name? Zamia pygmea. Z-A-M-I-A P-Y-G-M-I-A. Smallest one is Zamia pygmea and the tallest one is which one? Sequoia. So please remember this point. Now we are going to learn about the vegetative parts of gymnosperms. Vegetative parts means you have to understand the root, leaf, stem. First we are going to learn about the root portion or the root part of gymnosperm. The roots are generally taproots. The roots are generally taproots. Means what you have to understand? Any idea regarding that? You have to understand that the roots which are arising from the radicle, that root is known as what? Primary root or taproot. And even you have learned about different types of root system. Taproot system, then fibrous root system, then adventitious root system. What are you knowing about fibrous root system? In that also mainly grass plants it is present. So there what is happening? Primary root is developing from the radicle, but it is short-lived. Then after, from the base of the stem, small hair-like roots are arising. A group of roots are arising there. So we are calling it as fibrous root system. In the case of taproot, the primary root is developing. Then afterwards, from that the branches arising. That is known as secondary root, tertiary root. Like that many roots are arising there. And that system is known as taproot system. And now what is adventitious root? So we told that generally roots are arising from radicle. Now, apart from radicle, from any other part of the plant, if the root is rising, so we can call it as adventitious root. Have you seen that some roots which are hanging down from the branches of banyan tree? Yes, that is an example of adventitious root, and it has a name. Who knows that? Good, that is prop root. And that root is for supporting the branches, otherwise it may break. Heavy branches are there. So to support them, these roots are hanging down and it becomes as pillars and they are supporting the branches. Anyhow, in the case of Gymnosperms, the roots are generally which one? Tap roots. And in some genera, roots have fungal association in the form of mycorrhiza, and that is in Pinus species. So in Pinus species, its root has an association with the fungus. Myco word you have to remember, that is always related to the word fungus. Phyco means alga, myco means fungus. So here mycorrhiza, rhiza means root. The association between root and fungus, that is known as mycorrhiza. Example is in Pinus, this association is present in its roots. And while in some others, for example in Cycas, small specialized roots called coralloid roots are associated with nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria. So some specialized roots are present in the case of where? Cycas. And there what happens? These specialized roots are associated with the nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria. So in the atmosphere nitrogen is present, but that cannot be absorbed by plants as such. So in the absorbable form, converting the function, that is mainly done by whom? This nitrogen fixing bacteria. They are absorbing and converting it in the absorbable form for plants. So you have told about two types of roots, mainly mycorrhiza, that is an association between a root and fungus in the case of Pinus. Specialized roots, coralloid roots in Cycas, that is association with which one? Then nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria. Now we are going to discuss about the stems. The stems are unbranched or branched. The stems are unbranched in the case of Cycas and branched in the case of which one? Pinus and Citrus. When we are seeing this figure 3.4, you can see A and B. Here A is Cycas, it is unbranched, but the second one Pinus, you can see many branches are there. So when we are discussing about the stem of Gymnosperm, the plants which are coming under that, so that it may be branched or unbranched. Now we are going to discuss about the leaves of Gymnosperm. The leaves may be simple or compound. In this, the leaves may be simple or compound. In Cycas, the pinnate leaves is coming under compound leaves. Compound leaves again divided into many. From that pinnately compound is there, palmately compound is there. But here in Cycas, the leaves are of pinnately compound type and they persist few years. They exist for few years. The leaves in Gymnosperms. How the leaves in Gymnosperms are well adapted. It's a very important point, you have to underline that. The leaves in Gymnosperms are well adapted to withstand extreme conditions of temperature, humidity and wind. So how the leaves are adapted to withstand the extremity of temperature, humidity and wind. So the leaves in Gymnosperms are well adapted to withstand extreme of temperature, humidity and wind. In conifers, the needle-like leaves reduce the surface area. So first you have to see that if the surface area of the leaf is more, the evaporation of water from which happen will be also more. And to reduce that, in the case of Gymnosperms, The leaves are which type? In conifers, the needle-like leaves reduce the surface area. And again their thick cuticle. The cuticles are thick. And sunken stomata. The stomata are kept in deep. It's not just exposed. Because you know that stomata are present on the lower epidermis. But here in the case of gymnosperms, in conifers, stomata are sunken. They are found in deep. And they also help to reduce water loss. So their thick cuticle and sunken stomata also help to reduce water loss. So whatever adaptations are there, the leaves in gymnosperms are well adapted to withstand extreme of temperature, humidity and wind. In conifers, the needle-like leaves reduce the surface area. Their thick cuticle and sunken stomata also help to reduce water loss. Now we are going to learn about a very important topic of gymnosperm, that is Heterospory. What is that? Heterospory. What is this Heterospory? Hetero word means you have to understand different. Homo means same. So anyhow, from that you can understand different types of spores. Let's see now what is explained here. The gymnosperms are heterosporous. The gymnosperms are heterosporous. That means they produce haploid microspores and megaspores. The two kinds of spores are produced within sporangia that are borne on sporophylls, which are arranged spirally along an axis to form lax. Lax means you have to understand loose or compact strobili or cones. Once again see here. The gymnosperms are heterosporous. They produce haploid microspores and megaspores. Means the spores are haploid. Microspores means you have to understand the small spores are small. Megaspores means big. Anyhow, two kinds of spores are produced. And where these spores are produced? Within the sporangia. Sporangium singular, sporangia plural. And the sporangia are borne where? On the sporophylls. Means sporangia bearing leaves are the sporophylls. And the sporophylls are arranged how? Spirally along an axis to form a loose or compact structure known as strobili or cones. The strobili bearing microsporophylls and microsporangia are called microsporangiate or male strobili or male cone. Listen, the strobili, I told you strobili is the plural of strobilus. The strobili bearing microsporophylls and microsporangia are called what? Microsporangiate or male strobili or male cone. The microspores develop into a male gametophytic generation which is highly reduced and is confined to only a limited number of cells. Once again see that point. The microspores develop into a male gametophytic generation which is highly reduced and is confined to only a limited number of cells. This reduced gametophyte is called a pollen grain. So what is it known as? Pollen grain. You know about pollen grain. Sure? Which one? Have you observed it anywhere? On daily basis we are seeing that. Just for example, our common hibiscus flower, shoe flower. When it is blown, if you are going nearby that and touching the flower, you can see that some yellow powder is coming on your finger. So the tip of finger, this yellow powder whatever coming, what is that actually? Pollen grains. So in the case of gymnosperms, when we are discussing about this heterospory, we told that this microsporophylls and microsporangia and then after male strobili, all these topics we discussed. And what we have told at the last? The reduced gametophyte is known as what? Pollen grain. And the development of pollen grains takes place within the microsporangia. The development of pollen grain takes place where? Within the microsporangia. The cones bearing megasporophylls with ovules or megasporangia are called macrosporangiate or megasporangiate or female strobili or female corn. This topic is very simple, nothing to worry like that. Even in detail we are going to learn about this topic when we are going to explain from the material. So nothing to worry like that. Only you have to understand two types of spores are there. Microspores, megaspores. Microspore, the highly reduced one, that is known as the pollen grain. And it is formed where? Where it is formed? The pollen grains development takes place where? Within the microsporangia. Now we are going to tell about megaspore. So the corns bearing megasporophylls with ovules. Ovules also known as megasporangium. Ovule is also known as what? Megasporangium. Ovules, megasporangia, are called megasporangiate or macrosporangiate or female strobili or female corn. As we discussed in the case of microsporangia, the same we are explaining about the megasporangia. So once again see the point. The corns bearing megasporophylls with ovules or megasporangia are called what? Macrosporangiate, or we can call it as megasporangiate, or we can call it as female strobili, and one more name if we are saying, that is female corn. The male or female corns or strobili may be born on the same tree. In the case of pinus, these male and female corns or male strobili or female strobili are born in the same tree. But in the case of cycas, male corns and megasporophylls are born on different trees. So in the case of pinus, male or female corns or the male strobili or female strobili may be born on the same tree. But in the case of cycas, male corns and megasporophylls or female corns are born on different trees. Now the megaspore mother cell is differentiated from one of the cells of the nucellus. Listen once again. The megaspore mother cell MMC, which is differentiated from one of the cells of the nucellus. So what do you mean by nucellus? Have you heard about this terminology anywhere, this term? Okay, no problem. Please write down. Nucellus. The central part of an ovule. The central part of an ovule containing the embryo sac. What is that? The central part of an ovule containing the embryo sac, or the central and chief part of a plant ovule. Once again, the central and chief part of a plant ovule, also known as what? Megasporangium. Good. The central and chief part of a plant ovule that encloses the female gametophyte. Clear? Next sentence. Nucellus give nutrition to the megaspore. Nucellus give nutrition to the megaspore, whereas endosperm is the main source of food for growing embryo. Second point, once again I am saying, the central and chief part of a plant ovule that encloses the female gametophyte. Nucellus give nutrition to the megaspore, whereas endosperm is the main source of food for the growing embryo. This we will learn in detail afterwards. Just now you have to understand this much, that what the point we are covering here. Listen. The megaspore mother cell is differentiated from one of the cells of the nucellus. The nucellus is protected by envelopes and the composite structure is called an ovule. The nucellus is protected by what? Envelopes, or we can call it as integumented. So this ovule can be called as what? Integumented ovule or integumented megaspore. So the nucellus is protected by envelopes and the composite structure is called an ovule. The ovules are born on megasporophylls. Megasporophylls means which you have to understand. What you have to understand? Yes, megasporangium bearing leaves. The ovules are born on megasporophylls which may be clustered to form the female cones. Once again, see the point. The ovules are born on Megasporophylls, which may be clustered or grouped to form the female cones. The megaspore mother cell divides meiotically to form 4 megaspores. So listen once again. The megaspore mother cell, first point we told that the megaspore mother cell is differentiated from one of the cells of the nucellus. Now one of the this megaspore mother cell divides meiotically to form what? 4 megaspores. And one of these megaspore is enclosed within the megasporangium or nucellus, develops into a multicellular female gametophyte that bears 2 or more archegonia or female sex organs. As you know that archegonium is the female sex organ and antheridium is the male sex organ. So once again see the point here. One of the megaspores, as we told that the megaspore mother cell undergoes meiotic division and it produces 4 megaspores. And from these 4 megaspores, only one is functional. Other 3 gets degenerated. And this functional megaspore, so this functional megaspore which is enclosed within the megasporangium or the nucellus develops into a multicellular female gametophyte and that bears 2 or more archegonia or female sex organs. The multicellular female gametophyte is also retained within the megasporangium. So the multicellular female gametophyte is also retained within megasporangium. Now we are coming to the concluding paragraph of gymnosperm. Unlike bryophytes and pteridophytes, in gymnosperms, the male and female gametophytes do not have an independent free-living existence. Now we are going to learn about the life cycle of gymnosperm. In our material, very nicely, in detail, it is explained. That time it will be explained once again to you to make the concept clear for you. But here in short it is given, you have to understand. Unlike bryophytes and pteridophytes, in gymnosperms, the male and the female gametophytes do not have an independent free-living existence. When we were telling about bryophytes and pteridophytes, we saw that they have to depend one another there. But now here we are saying in the case of what? Unlike bryophytes and pteridophytes, in gymnosperms, the female and male gametophytes do not have an independent free-living existence. They remain within the sporangia retained on the sporophytes. That means anyhow there is a dependency of gametophyte and sporophyte. They cannot live independently. But in bryophytes and pteridophytes, when we were explaining that time, it was discussed that much dependence was not coming there. But now, here we have to understand they do not have any independent free-living existence. They remain within the sporangia retained on the sporophytes. So means gametophytes remain within the sporangia retained on the last point also we told that what we have discussed. The multicellular female gametophyte is also retained within the megasporangium. So the pollen grain is released from the microsporangium. That also we discussed. Pollen grain, the reduced male gametophyte is developing in the microsporangium. So the pollen grain is released from the microsporangium. They are carried in air currents and come in contact with the opening of the ovules borne on Megasporophylls. Once again see here, they are carried in air currents and come in contact with the opening of the ovules borne on Megasporophylls. So the male gamete which are released from the microsporangium are carried in air currents and they are coming in contact with what? The opening of the ovules borne on Megasporophylls. Now, what is happening? The pollen tube carrying the male gametes grow towards archegonia in the ovules. Archegonia are what? Female sex organ. So here what happens? The pollen tube, you have to understand from the pollen grains what is germinating. Pollen tube is germinating. If the sex compatibility is there, then only the same species, then only it happens. So once the pollen tube is arising and it carries male gametes and it grows towards, what grows towards? The pollen tube grows towards the archegonia, that is the female sex organ in the ovules, and discharge their contents near the mouth of the archegonia. So this pollen tube carries male gametes, and usually this pollen tube carries 2 male gametes. In the case of gymnosperms, only one is functional, other is getting degenerated. And this one of the male gametes fuses with the egg. Then what happens? Fertilization. So see the point once again. The pollen tube carrying the male gametes grows towards archegonia in the ovules and discharge their contents near the mouth of the archegonia. Following fertilization, zygote develops. Means male gamete and female gamete fuses and results in the formation of what? Diploid zygote. And the zygote develops into what? An embryo. And the ovules into seeds. So the zygote is developing as embryo and the ovules into seeds. These seeds are not covered. That's why the first point we discussed, that the gymnosperms are known as the naked seeded plants. Before fertilization and after fertilization they remain as exposed. So here the seeds are not covered. So this is related to gymnosperms. Many topics we discussed. First of all, we told that why gymnosperm is known as such. Originated from 2 words, gymnos and sperma. Gymnos means naked and sperma means seeds. Then we were telling about the different types of plants are included: medium-sized, tall trees and shrubs. The tallest one, what is the name? Yes, very good. Redwood tree or sequoia. And the smallest also I told you. What's the name of the same? Very, very good. What is that? Zamia pygmea. So then we were telling about the root, leaf and stem. So related to root, we told that in some of the plants there is an association with the fungus, as in the case of pinus. So that association is known as mycorrhiza. In case of cycas, some specialized roots are there and it has an association with the nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria. These roots are known as coralloid roots. Then we were telling about the stem. So in the case of cycas, the stems are unbranched, but in the case of pinus and cedrus, they are branched. And related to leaves, we told that it may be simple or compound. And when we are discussing about cycas, they are having pinnate leaves and it exists for long years or few years. And in the case of leaves of gymnosperms, they are well adapted to withstand the extremes of temperature, humidity and wind. For example, in conifers, needle-like leaves are there. It is helping them for reducing the surface area. And because of that, water loss will be obviously less. And then they are even having the cuticle, thick cuticle. That also reduce water loss. And the other one, they are having the stomata but which are sunken. That also help to reduce the water loss. And the next we were discussing about the Heterospary. 2 types of spores, microspores and megaspores. Microspores are developed in microsporangium and megaspores developed in megasporangium. So male gamete, the highly reduced one, is known as pollen grain. And the female gamete, egg. So both are fusing, and then after fertilization happen. Fusing means fertilization, fusion. And that results in the formation of diploid zygote, and the zygote develops into embryo, and then ovules are converting or developing as seeds. But the seeds are not covered. So this is related to gymnosperms. I think the topic is clear for you. Now in the next session, we will explain about gymnosperms in detail from the material. But before that, whatever topics we learned from this textbook, you have to understand, you have to make it clear. Thank you so much.